It started on a Tuesday. Not the kind of Tuesday that makes the news, just an ordinary one. Gray light on the windows, half-finished coffee cooling beside the keyboard, the soft hum of computers that had worked a little too hard for a little too long. People were chatting, laughing quietly. The kind of morning where nothing seems urgent, the kind you barely remember by evening. And then it happened. A flicker on one screen, then another. Then silence. Not the gentle kind of silence, the heavy kind, the one that settles in just before panic begins. Someone whispered, "Wait, are we down?" A heartbeat later, the room exploded with noise. Phones buzzed, keyboards clattered, Slack pings echoed like alarm bells. You could feel it, the tension rising, sharp and invisible, like heat from the pavement after rain. Voices overlapped. Someone muttered, "Oh no, not again." And for a moment, I felt that old familiar pull, that rush of anxiety that says, this is out of control. But then, something stopped me. Right above my desk, half faded from the sun, was a small yellow note. A note I'd written months ago in a calmer moment. Just 3 lines, scrawled in blue ink. Server down plan. Read before you panic. Step 1, check the backup. Step 2, message the admin group. Step 3, post an update in the status channel. That was it. 3 steps. No meetings, no drama, just a quiet plan for a noisy moment. I stared at it, took one slow breath, and followed it, exactly as written. And within minutes, the chaos began to shrink. The noise softened. People stopped guessing and started moving, not frantic, not fearful, just steady. It was like watching a storm lose its wind. One by one, voices dropped, screens flickered back to life, the hum of the office returned, softer, calmer, wiser somehow. And standing there, marker in hand, I felt a quiet realization unfold in my chest. Peace isn't luck. Peace is preparation. It doesn't arrive when the storm ends. It begins the moment you decide to build for it. I remember standing there, watching the lights on the servers blink back to life, and feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Quiet pride. Not the loud kind that makes you boast, the quiet kind that makes you exhale. All because of a little yellow note. 3 simple lines I'd once written for myself. A message from a calmer version of me, the one who trusted that chaos would come and left me a way through it. Step 1, check the backup. Step 2, message the admin group. Step 3, post an update in the status channel. That's all it said. But it turned what could have been a disaster into a moment of calm. Later that day, when everything was running again, I sat alone in the quiet office and stared at that note. The corners had curled from the sunlight. The ink was a little faded, but the message felt timeless. Because what it really said wasn't about servers or systems at all. It said, remember, panic is optional. Driving home that night, I kept thinking, how many storms in life could be softened by a plan taped in the right place? How many mornings could begin calmer if we left ourselves reminders from our steadier selves? Peace, I realized, isn't built in the moments you need it most. It's built quietly, in the moments when you think you never will. A few days later, I started noticing where else these invisible nets already existed. At home, for instance. My wife keeps a tiny note on her phone labeled "Missed Flight Plan." It says, "Don't run. It won't make the gate reopen. Rebook through the app first, not the line. Find coffee. Text the kids. Breathe." It sounds simple, even a little silly. But that list has saved us more than once, because when everyone else in the terminal is spinning, she's steady. She's not calmer by nature, she's calmer by design. For years I used to confuse preparedness with worry. I thought people who made contingency plans were pessimists. Turns out, they're the ones who sleep best. Dale Carnegie once said, "Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage." A plan B isn't a symptom of anxiety. It's an act of quiet courage. You're not saying something bad will happen. You're saying, if it does, I'll know what to do. And here's the paradox. The calmer you prepare, the less you need the plan. Because planning rewires the mind. It tells your nervous system, we've already walked this road. So when chaos shows up, you don't freeze. You just follow the footprints you left for yourself. One evening, I watched the same lesson play out again. Not in the office this time, but in our own kitchen. Dinner had burned. Schedules had collided. The whole day had simply fallen apart. Old me would have sighed, snapped, maybe tried to power through the chaos. But right there on the refrigerator door was a small handwritten note. It said, "If the day collapses, pause. Eat something simple. Reset the plan." Just 8 words, but they might as well have been a rescue line. I looked at that note, smiled, and reached for the emergency frozen pizza we keep for nights like this. 10 minutes later, the smell of tomato and cheese filled the room. The kids were laughing. My wife and I were breathing again. Not because pizza fixes everything, it doesn't. But because preparation turns panic into choice. It takes what could have been a breaking point and turns it into a small, almost tender reminder that you can always begin again. I realized then, calm isn't something that finds you. It's something you build, piece by piece, note by note. You'd be amazed how much peace can fit on a single sticky note. Over time, those little safety nets began to multiply. A backup charger in the glove box, a list of emergency contacts printed and pinned, an extra set of keys hidden under the porch. Each one whispered the same quiet truth. You're safe enough to live freely. Because security doesn't cage you, it frees you. When you know you can handle surprises, you stop fearing them. And when you stop fearing them, life finally opens its arms again. At work, the ideas started to spread. One afternoon, our team created a shared document titled, "When Things Go Wrong." It wasn't fancy, just a plain page with a few bullet points. What to do if the site crashes, what to do if a client walks away, what to do if a deadline gets missed. When we first made it, people laughed. Someone joked, "Wow, planning for disasters already?" But months later, when one of those disasters actually showed up, no one panicked. The room stayed quiet. Someone opened the document and said, "Page 2, paragraph 3. We followed the steps. Problem solved. No shouting, no blame, just quiet, practiced movement. Afterward, one of my colleagues came up to me and said softly, "That plan didn't just save the project, it saved our energy." And that's when it clicked. A safety net doesn't just protect your time, it protects your peace of mind. Because stress doesn't only come from problems, it comes from not knowing what to do next. Preparation, even in small doses, turns fear into clarity, and clarity is the best medicine for chaos. Over the next few months, that one document became a kind of quiet tradition. Before every big launch or risky project, someone would ask, "All right, what's our just-in-case plan?" It wasn't paranoia, it was professionalism, with heart. Funny thing is, once we had that structure, people actually started taking more creative risks. They dared to experiment, because when you trust the net beneath you, you're not afraid to jump. And that's what calm really does. It doesn't make you smaller. It makes you braver. The same principle started showing up outside the office, too. I saw it in places I never expected. In kitchens, in cars, in quiet living rooms late at night. A friend of mine, a single mom, keeps a thick folder on her kitchen counter. On the front, in her neat handwriting, it says, "Just in case." Inside are babysitter numbers, copies of insurance cards, a small list of emergency instructions, and notes about her daughter's allergies. She once told me, "I never want anyone to need this folder, but if they ever do, they'll be grateful it exists." That line stayed with me, because that folder isn't fear, it's love written in the language of preparation. It's love that says, "I can't control the world, but I can leave breadcrumbs for you through the storm." And yet most people resist this kind of planning. They say, "I don't want to jinx it," as if writing a backup plan invites disaster. But I've learned the opposite is true. Writing the plan releases disaster's hold on you. It stops whispering, "What if?" in your ear. You stop waiting for the worst and start trusting your readiness. Preparation isn't predicting pain, it's predicting your own strength. Because once you've imagined the path through chaos, chaos loses its teeth. You stop bracing for impact and start believing in your resilience. I remember once telling my wife, "You know, all this planning makes us sound a little paranoid." She smiled and said, "No, it makes us peaceful." And she was right. Peace isn't built from ignorance of danger. It's built from confidence in your response. That's the quiet power of preparation. It lets you love deeper, work braver, and rest easier. Years ago, I was standing on a stage, giving one of the most important presentations of my career. The room was full. Clients, executives, the kind of people who measure silence in dollars. I'd rehearsed every line. The slides were perfect. The spotlight was warm on my face. And then, halfway through, the screen went black. The projector died. Just like that. For a moment, everything froze. The audience shifted in their seats. Somewhere in the back, someone coughed. And then, something surprising happened. I didn't panic. I reached into my bag, pulled out a stack of printed slides, and kept going. Calmly, naturally, like it had all been part of the plan. When it was over, the client walked up to me and said, "I don't know what impressed me more, your talk or how calm you were when everything went wrong." I smiled and said, "I wasn't calm. I was ready." That sentence has followed me ever since, because calmness isn't the absence of fear, it's the presence of a plan. It's knowing that you've already rehearsed the worst and discovered that you can handle it. That night, Driving home through the city lights, I kept repeating those words in my head. I wasn't calm, I was ready. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized the same thing applies everywhere, at work, at home, in life. Invisible safety nets don't come from luck, they come from care. Care for your future self. They're the quiet promise you make to the person you'll become, that when the world shakes, you'll still have your footing. And once you've built those nets, you start noticing where else they're missing. At work, maybe it's that one situation that always raises your pulse. At home, maybe it's the one argument that always derails your peace. In your own heart, maybe it's that familiar moment when you feel lost. What if, instead of dreading those moments, you simply built a plan for them? A few small steps that bring you back to calm. Because readiness isn't about expecting trouble, it's about respecting peace. So here's what I started doing, and maybe it'll help you too. One quiet evening, I sat down with a cup of tea and wrote 3 small plans. Nothing complicated, just 3 safety nets. One for work, one for home, and one for myself. The first one said, if the system fails, call Alex, post an update, take a breath, and start again. The second one was for home. If we miss the flight, rebook online, find a hotel near the airport, text the kids, and breathe. And the third one, the personal one, was simple. If the day collapses, pause, eat something small, rest, and restart. That was it. 3 short paragraphs. But writing them down felt like building a quiet fortress inside my mind. Because once you have even a simple plan, your body relaxes, your thoughts stop circling. You remember, you've already prepared for this. Now, every month, I revisit those little plans. I check if the names and numbers still work, if the steps still fit the life I'm living now. Updating them isn't a chore. It's an act of affection, a way of saying, I care enough about my future self to make life a little easier. And something shifts after that. You start walking differently. You breathe a little slower. You meet each morning not with tension, but with quiet confidence. Because deep down you know, even if things fall apart, you'll know exactly where to begin. Funny thing, the more you practice safety, the braver you become. You start to dream bigger, take smarter risks, and trust yourself a little more each time. Because you're not afraid of falling anymore. You've already built the net. That's when you realize preparation isn't the opposite of adventure. It's what makes adventure possible. A friend of mine, a mountain climber, once told me something beautiful. He said, the only reason I can enjoy the view is because I trust the rope. That line has never left me, because that's exactly what invisible safety nets are. They're the rope that lets you look up instead of down. They don't take away the height, they take away the fear of falling. And when the fear fades, the beauty comes rushing in. I once shared this idea with a group of college students. They were young, bright, full of ideas, but you could feel the pressure they carried, that quiet fear of failure humming under every question. One student raised her hand and asked, but doesn't planning for what could go wrong make life boring? I smiled. Quite the opposite, I told her. When you've already planned for the fall, you can dance on the edge. They laughed, but the room went quiet after. You could see the thought landing, that freedom doesn't come from avoiding risk. It comes from trusting your preparation. We talk a lot about living in the moment, and that's good. But living in the moment doesn't mean ignoring tomorrow. It means respecting it enough to be ready. Invisible safety nets make presence possible. They free you to focus on joy, because fear has already been handled. That's what calm really is. Not some mystical gift only monks or sages have, but a practice anyone can build, one note, one plan, one breath at a time. There's a quiet pride in being prepared, not the loud kind that shows off checklists, but the calm kind that smiles when the unexpected knocks and says softly, "I was expecting you." That's grace under pressure. And grace, like any art, can be rehearsed. Think of pilots before takeoff. They don't rely on optimism. They rely on checklists. No one calls them anxious for doing so. We call them professionals. So why not treat our own lives with the same respect? Every time I watch a pilot go through that calm pre-flight ritual, flipping switches, checking gauges, reading line by line, I think, that's what real peace looks like. It's not crossed legs on a yoga mat. It's quiet confidence in the face of chaos. And it made me wonder, what if we lived our days the same way? Not with paranoia, but with presence. Not expecting the worst, but simply ready for it. So I started a small Sunday ritual. Every week, before the noise begins again, I sit down with a notebook titled Safety Nets. 3 pages, 3 sections. Work. What could break and what I'll do first. Home. Who to call, where to meet, what matters most. Self. How to reset if my energy runs out. I read it slowly, then close the book. That's it. 10 quiet minutes. But those 10 minutes have changed my Mondays forever. Because when the week begins, I don't start from tension, I start from trust. Trust in my own preparedness. Trust in the rope I've already tied. And here's the secret. Once you trust your nets, you start building them for others too. At work, I now ask my team to create shared backup plans, not to control them, but to free them. Because when people know what to do in crisis, they stop fearing mistakes. They start experimenting again. One of my colleagues once told me, "Your calm checklist made me brave enough to try something new." That's when I realized preparedness doesn't just protect, it inspires. When fear drops, imagination rises. When chaos feels contained, creativity expands. And isn't that what we all want? To stop walking through our days like firefighters and start moving through them like builders? Preparedness isn't about closing doors. It's about opening them safely. That's the quiet transformation. From anxiety to artistry. From panic to purpose. Because calm isn't luck, it's practice. One winter, we were driving through a snowstorm. The road ahead had vanished into white. Wind howled against the windshield, and the world felt smaller than the beam of our headlights. My daughter, maybe 8 years old at the time, looked up from her book and asked, "Dad, what if the car breaks?" I smiled and said, "Then we pull over, turn on the hazards, and wait for help. We've got blankets in the back, remember?" She nodded, satisfied, then went right back to reading. That moment, that tiny moment, has stayed with me ever since. Because that's what invisible safety nets do. They make even children feel that the world is trustworthy. She didn't need me to promise that nothing bad would ever happen. She just needed to know that if it did, we had a plan. That's the kind of love preparation gives. Quiet, steady, invisible from the outside, but strong enough to calm a heart in the middle of a storm. I've come to believe that preparation is love in disguise. It's how we say, I've thought about you. I've thought about tomorrow. I care enough to make sure you're safe even when I'm not there. And that doesn't make life rigid. It makes it peaceful. Because when you've already answered the what if, you can live more fully in the what is. Sometimes people tell me, I don't have time to prepare. But the truth is, you'll spend that time either before the storm or during it. One is calm, the other is chaos. Preparation is just time paid in advance, and the return on that investment is peace. Dale Carnegie once said, most worries melt when you take action. He was right, because a written plan is an action. It's worry converted into structure. And once you've written it down, your mind finally exhales. It says, I've handled that. That's why people who prepare don't just survive stress, they move through it gracefully. They age slower. They smile sooner. They trust deeper. Because their energy isn't being drained by what if, it's being guided by even if. You see, calm doesn't mean nothing goes wrong. It means you know what to do when it does. I think that's one of the quiet miracles of being human. We can rehearse peace. We can practice grace before we need it. You don't need walls to feel safe. You just need nets strong enough to hold you. Nets woven from care, from foresight, from kindness. And the best part? You can build them yourself. I want you to picture something. Imagine walking a tightrope stretched between today and tomorrow. Below you, not fear, but a net. A net woven by your own care, your notes, your quiet preparation. Wouldn't you walk differently? Wouldn't you breathe easier? That's what invisible safety nets do. They don't stop the fall. They stop the fear of falling. And once the fear is gone, you stop gripping life so tightly. You move smoother. You see clearer. You start to trust your own balance. So tonight, before you close your eyes, take 10 quiet minutes. Write 3 short backup plans. One for work, one for home, one for your personal day. They don't have to be perfect, they just have to exist. Practice one small step from each. Pin them somewhere you can see. Review them once a month, kindly, calmly. Because readiness isn't about expecting trouble. It's about respecting peace. And when tomorrow throws its surprises, and it will, you'll smile and think, I've met you before. You'll know exactly where to start. Because calm isn't the absence of storms. It's the confidence that your nets are strong enough to hold you. So take a breath, write your plans, and rest easy tonight. Tomorrow may never come, but today is here, waiting for you to breathe easy. Because, my friend, you're ready.